last week, we began this conversation about this idea of becoming and mastering manifestation. And for those of you that were here, we spent some time and we talked about this idea, or this formula, if you will, of powerful creation. The definition really comes down to this idea of taking substance, the stuff that's out there, it's always there, there's no shortage of it. We use directive power. When we talked about directive power, we talked about your mind, your thoughts, your words, and your action. And then we use spiritual tools like visualizations, like affirmations, like denials, like the 12 powers that we use here at Unity. And so you actually step into this point in your own reality where all of a sudden you go like, oh my God, I think I can actually start doing something about my reality, and I can start doing something about it. So in other words, you go from being a victim into stepping into your power over here, where you become, well, who you are, which is the divine child of God who's got amazing abilities to create. You're a creator. We're made in the image and likeness of God. You are a creator. The only difference in this entire process is just asking yourself the question, do I want to do it consciously now, or do I want to stay over here and do it unconsciously? My invitation to you was to do it over here where you're conscious about it, because it is a lot more fun to do it over here than it is over there, right? So that's what we talked about. And we talked about this idea when you start applying these metaphysical tools. And I also mentioned last week how it's true that this is some of the deeper thought that's going on at Unity. You're becoming a metaphysician. Some people really jump into this stuff. I myself am one of those people, but not everybody does. And if you don't, it's okay. But ultimately, when you start practicing the stuff, then all of a sudden you're going to have what shows up in your life, which is called a demonstration. Again, how do you want it to show up? Do you want it to show up unconsciously and like, whoa? Or do you want to go, wait a minute, I got 2 cents to say about this. Which one do I want? And so then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well then, cool, let's have it show up. So then you get all excited. You go like, I got this. This is fun. This metaphysical stuff is so fun. I'm going to go play with it with my affirmations and denials. This is going to be great, and I'm going to create the life I want. And you start applying all these tools. And then, go figure, it always works, doesn't it? That's what we're talking about here, folks. Because it doesn't always work. And that's what we started talking about last week. And that's what this little section that we're going to be talking about last week and this week is this. But what happens when it doesn't show up? What's the problem? And so last week we talked about that, and we talked about in the book Heart-Centered Metaphysics, it seems to, if there seems to be an error in their outworking, it's because some misapplication on the part of the demonstrator. Wait a minute, so then it's not God? Nope, that's not a problem. It's not these spiritual principles? Nope, it's not the problem with the spiritual the principles, not at all. So wait a minute, if it's not those things, then what could it be? Whoa, right? And so I called this, it's really this misapplication. What I called it was there's a misalignment somewhere. There's something that's out of alignment, our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. But then in the book, it also talked about obstacles that seem to be in the order are primarily where? In your mind and in your heart or your feelings. And that's kind of where we left everything off. So stumbly blocks are primarily our thoughts and our feelings, right? So that's where I left off last week, and it was this idea or this thought, wait a minute, Mike, I'm starting to practice this stuff. Why isn't this working? And we started that discussion. But I also said that was a really good cornerstone to start talking about manifestation and what the problems may be. But there's more. There's other things that could be going on, and that's why I love doing this work, and that's why today we're going to be doing a little bit of a deeper dive. And I'm just going to warn everybody, like, this is not probably going to be like the most mind-blowing information. In fact, it might be a little heady. I'm going to try and do the best I can to get us through it, but I also want to emphasize this point. There are several tools to manifesting what you want in your life, and Unity is a big fan or a big part of that and has shown us some incredible things. And my hope is just to share some more thoughts with you today. And so if by chance this information is something where you go, oh, I think this would be cool, I'd like to kind of start playing with some of the stuff, I can at least show you some of those thoughts and ideas. And I'm sure for those of you that are into this game, this manifestation game, a lot of these things are going to sound familiar, whether you practice law of attraction or the 400 other ways that you can practice manifestation. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but this is Unity's way, and this is Unity's format. So this is part 2, and I'm going to start off with this and just share this with you. You've seen this book out in our lobby. It's called The Heart-Centered Book of Metaphysics. And in my opinion, if you're going to be serious about studying metaphysics and how it works and how you can use it, how you can apply it, you want this. I'm just going to tell you, you want this book, okay? Because everything that I'm going to share with you today is from that book. And I mentioned to you this before, and it drove me nuts, because what I didn't realize is that, way back in the day, when I started at Unity, what I didn't realize is that if you go through the ministerial program, go figure, that they actually had these 2 manuals that they gave all the ministers. And when I went through the program, all of a sudden what I realized was basically they took those 2 manuals and they put them into this book. And when I read the book, I was pissed. Why was I so mad? I was so mad because there was so much information in there that would have been helpful to have when I was going through all this stuff. Because if you really start to do a deep dive into the metaphysics and you start reading Fillmore is an amazing author, but he's really a lot up here, and it can get dry for anybody that's tried to read a lot of Fillmore. And before you do that deep dive, please come see me. Just come see me. But if you want a lighter approach to it, a more practical way to do it, it's in these books, and that's what I was so mad at. It was like, how could you not be giving this information to everybody that really wants to study metaphysics? It's right there, and it's simple, and it's relatable, and I understand it. I can play with it. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about some different topics that came up in this book, and one of the other obstacles can be fear, lack, and the negative side. Focusing on the negative and or dwelling in fear increases what is feared in consciousness and can result in its outpicturing in the physical realm. Last week, I told you the story about when Peter got out of the water and he sunk, right? And he was going down. Why did he sink? Because he saw all the waves and was like, oh no. Although when he originally got on the boat, he was like, cool, I can walk right over to Jesus, no problem. I'll walk on this water. I got this. And then he freaks out and he starts sinking. Same thing. You're focusing on the wrong thing. So what is the application? Well, the first step out of negativity and fear is becoming aware of them. Wow, I got some stinking thinking going on here. Maybe I want to pay attention, right? Once negativity and fear are identified, then denials can be used. Again, we're applying spiritual principles, denials. Denials can be used to withdraw the power given them. Affirmations can then be used to raise consciousness. Why are we trying to do that? Because we got some lousy thinking going on in our mind. We might want to pause for a minute and figure out what that thinking is and go, hey, I'm done with that. That's not serving me anymore. I want to replace that stinking thinking with something that actually is powerful and creative and can be helpful. And that's what denials and affirmations are used for. Affirmations can then be used to raise consciousness from fear to love, from the false to true. Okay? Joy and cheerfulness. I love this. I love this just because it's really simple. Are you joyful? Are you being joyful? One of the happiest people I know, and it's been my pleasure to get to know over the last couple of months, and it's so fun. And Nancy, I'm just going to mention you because every time I look at you, I just get a big smile on my face. And the reason I do is because I can tell you're full of joy. And it's really beautiful to see. And others, I'm not saying she's the only one, but you can tell that being a joyful person is an offshoot of practicing spiritual principles. You do that. It dissolves the blocks to demonstration, uneasiness, fears, doubts, and discouraged states of mind. So what do you do about it? I don't know. What do you got to do to make yourself happy and joyful? What works for you? In Unity, they have these crazy thing called joy songs, but there's a million things you can do. There's not just one thing that you can do. But the idea of actually saying to yourself, I want to be more joyful. I think I want to have fun in this life. I want to smile more. I want to laugh more. I want to actually have some fun. Joyful. It is a natural state of what happens when you start practicing this stuff on a regular basis. The next thing, again, these are deep metaphysical thoughts here. Attachment and non-attachment. Attachment to the outer realm and outer outcomes inhibits demonstration by hindering awareness of the ones in substance. So when I told you the story about me wanting to become a millionaire, and I was convinced I was going to do it when I was 19 years old, and I'm telling you right now, I grabbed that thing and choked it until there was nothing else left. I did. I became obsessed with it. Ask my wife. She will tell you that I had literally shoe boxes, probably between 200 to 300 affirmations I was using daily. Do you know how long it takes to read 200 affirmations? It's like, dude, you need to chill out. Seriously, you need to relax. But I couldn't do it. It was like I was so obsessed with it. It was like, oh, I gotta make this happen. I'm gonna make this happen. That's really what it felt like. And I always say this, that when you're practicing this stuff, the last thing that I do anytime I'm working on manifesting, the very last thing that I do every single time, now, surrender. Let it go. Non-attachment. The application and attitude of non-attachment smooths the path to demonstration. Deny attachments to matter and material conditions and affirm oneness to become aware of divine ideas, especially divine substance. Yeah, you can do that, or you can just say, hey, God, this or something better, and for the good of all concerned. I'm pretty good. Like, that feels pretty good to me, right? Resistance and non-resistance. Resisting, fighting, and opposing unwanted thoughts. Hinder demonstration by increasing them in consciousness. So when people first start practicing this stuff, they walk around and they think, if they have a negative thought or idea, that that's horrible, that's bad. And so then what they go, no, don't think that. Do not think that thought. Do not think that thought. Do not think that thought. And it's like, guess what you're doing? You're thinking that thought. So then it becomes this dance of the thought coming up and you're just going, oh, it's okay, it's there. I'm all right with that. And it's an acceptance. You're not fighting. You're not, oh, I have to stop thinking like that. That doesn't work. Just trust me from experience. And I'm sure I could have some of you go like, yeah, I get it. So that we're just almost like in complete acceptance. Like, hey, this is my reality. This is what's going on right now. Yeah, I've got a negative thought. Okay, got it. And what? Do you have to engage with a negative thought? My observation is I can now observe it, smile at it, and just let it go. Most of the time, I'm human. I get caught just like everybody else does occasionally. But I'm just telling you as a general rule of thumb, my practice is to just observe it, be okay with it, and if I don't fight it or I don't resist it, I can let it go. I can let it go. It goes. It just goes, right? The practice of non-resistance is solely about thoughts and feelings being held in mind. Instead of focusing on what we don't want through resistance and opposition, we actively focus on what we desire. So again, what are you focusing on? Or as I always say, what are you feeding? Are you feeding what you don't want, or are you feeding what you do want? My suggestion is to feed what you do want. What you do want, right? Unforgiveness and forgiveness. Any unforgiveness can be a block to demonstration. The things we hold against ourselves and others keep us focused on the outer and not the inner. So this idea of unforgiveness, of course, and I'm just going to share with you my journey. The minute I start going into unforgiveness, what happens is I start pointing fingers. I start pointing fingers at everybody, everything, every situation, and everything I'm poking my finger at is anywhere else but where. Right? So then I'm sitting there going, right? That's what unforgiveness sounds like to me. And then when all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, Mike. And I was taught this a long time by somebody I used to study with 40 years ago. And I think this is one of the most powerful things that for sure he taught me, but it's something I've taken with me my entire life. And the statement is very simple. It's never outside of yourself, ever. It's never outside of yourself. Oh man, that means I got to look within me to figure out what's going on? That means that whatever I'm seeing is going on is that other person's doing is going, oh, I hate this. But I have found it to be true. And I have found the sooner I'm willing to look in the mirror and go, okay, where is this inside of me? This is why this situation is happening. I can just, at least I can find peace within it faster than if I continuously am looking outside of myself. That's the key. Because ultimately, where do I want to be? I want to be in peace. I want to be in happiness. I want to be in joy. I want to be in all these vibrations that I keep hearing are pretty cool places to hang out. And the more I spend time in those places, the more I want to hang out in those places. So it's kind of like I'm doing a scavenger hunt in my mind constantly. How is this? How does this feel? Does this feel like you want to feel? Is this feeling okay, or is it feeling horrible? And then, I'm human. And I have moments where stuff happens. But almost immediately what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the basics, and then I'm going to be with it and go, okay, where's the work here to be done? Where's my work? And what I have found is that if I'm willing to do that, if I'm willing to be honest and accept what's going on and accept that somehow I created this and there's probably a lesson or two for me to learn through it, the faster I can get through the process of going through it. Does it mean it's always easy? Doesn't. But it does mean there's a way, as opposed to just sitting there and letting unforgiveness be something that eats away at you. I don't want to do that anymore. I've done enough of it. So when we talk about this, forgiveness, and by the way, just a side note, forgiveness is not silent consent. The negative appearance of making the best of a situation while underneath it there is resentment. I'm going to read that again because I know for myself I needed to hear that, because what I would do is I would smile, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you, and underneath me I'd be like, "Ah." That's not it. That's not doing forgiveness work, not true forgiveness work. You know how you're done when you do true forgiveness work? Peace. Peace. That's how you know you're done, is when you find a state of peace. That's how you do it. Forgiveness is an art of putting something else in the place of the thing forgiven. So how about instead of hatred, how about instead of bitterness, how about instead of wah, we just go and say, yeah, I somehow created this. It's in my life to teach me something. I'm open to receive the lesson, receive the thing it's trying to show you, and then get on with your life. Works for me. But what shall we do? You should try to find the good. Put the thought of good into everything you meet, and you will see the good out of it. So in other words, I know this is crazy, but what if, and this comes down to the metaphysics side of things, what if what is happening to you there is a reason, and that it's actually for good? Like it's not there to hurt or to harm you. You're not being attacked. There's not some old man in the sky that's sitting there saying, oh, you screwed that one up, look at this. But that's what we were taught, right? At least some of us. But what if life is really working out for you? For your highest and your best good and your highest and best growth? And what if when something comes up, you could actually take a breath and sit down and just be with it? And just go, okay, God, I may not have any idea what's happening here, but I'm playing the stupid game Mike tells me to play. I'm actually going to take a deep breath and sit there, and I'm going to look at this thing, accept my part of it, because it's showing up in my life, so it's showing up there for a reason. And what if I just sit in it and try to get the lesson out of it? And then God's going to show up and go, well, here you go. But wait a minute, we don't have to sit here for the next 3 weeks, the next 3 years, the next 30 years? No, you don't. Why? Because you're divine. There's no need to sit in the lesson for the next 30 years. And yet, some of us do that, don't we? We do, right? Consciousness. It's important to understand the importance of our consciousness in spiritual growth. What is consciousness? How about just being present? How about just be present? And start sitting back instead of being like right here, like where you can't really do anything, but you're like here, and there's all this other stuff that's going on. What happens if you just were like, take a step back? Just go, wow, like check out the stuff that's going on inside of my head. Like, look what I'm doing here. Look at the thoughts that are going on. What am I thinking right now? What am I feeling? What am I doing? What could possibly be the deeper truth? That's consciousness. That's awareness. That's present moment. And in that moment, you are given so much information that you can actually do something with. That if you're present, that's the gift that you get when you slow down enough to feel it. That's the gift, consciousness. To ensure continuity of spirit, soul, and body as whole, we must ever seek to incorporate divine ideas into our mind. And really what that's talking about, again, is when we slow down enough and we become aware and we're in the present moment and we're not constantly using the past to tell us what to do, then all of a sudden you can stand in the present moment and just ask Spirit, okay, what would be the best thing for me to do in this moment? What is it? And then Spirit goes, here, why don't you try this? And whatever that is probably going to look a lot different than what you did before. More than likely. More than likely. It'll be different, right? Divine mind or oneness, it's impossible in this universal mind that fills everything there can be any such thing as absence. So in other words, it's always on. I say this, God is like gravity. God's always on. There's no lack of anything anywhere in reality. You hear Deepak Chopra will occasionally mention the present moment as being a moment of infinite possibilities. How can you tell if you're in the present moment? One of the ways I can tell, is when I think my options are very small. And what happens is I start to feel like this. When the truth is what's happening in the moment is I have infinite possibilities in terms of dealing with anything. But when we start judging, when we start shaming, when we start blaming, when we start doing all the stuff that we do, then our world becomes very small. And yet when we stay in the present moment, then guess what? We got everything. There's 100 different ways you can solve any problem. And we just have to tune in to divine mind. Being all demonstration from the awareness of divine mind or tapping into the divine. Oneness. Divine mind is the source of divine ideas. They're limitless. They're endless. The ways that you can live your life, the way that you can make decisions, the way that you can solve problems are endless. There's no limit. Infinite possibilities. Divine ideas, everything in the physical or manifested realms has its base in divine ideas. Divine ideas are the beginning point of all demonstration. How many people, and I know you're in here, will sit down and you get downloads? You know exactly what you know exactly what I'm talking about, is that you're hanging out and all of a sudden information will start flowing through you. And for me, it's been going on for years. And the way it works is so fascinating to me. It's like all of a sudden I'll be sitting there and it feels like there's just this little microscopic drop in this pond that is dead still. And I'll sit there and it comes as just a brief thought of something and I'll catch it. And then all of a sudden I'll start going, well, wait a minute, what about, whoa, what about this? And then all of a sudden the ripples start going out in the pond. And then this happens with my talks all the time. I'll have a thought or an idea that'll say, hey, what about if you do this kind of a talk? And then when I'm quiet with it and I spend time with it and I'm starting with a piece of paper and that's how I do it, then all of a sudden I got all these little offshoots off of the one thing, and then all of a sudden this thing starts coming together, but it started to come together from one thought. And I would argue that's the divine idea. That's the divine thought. Directly from Spirit saying, hey, you might want to talk about this because it could be pretty cool. I'm like, all right, let's do that. That's how I come up with my talks. I do. I've done that from the time I started speaking. I don't use ChatGPT. I don't. I actually connect with Spirit and let Spirit work through me. So anyways, we can experience any divine ideas directly by either believing in the idea or becoming totally willing to accept the idea, claiming it and affirming it. So in other words, once we get the idea or the thought, then it's a matter of, well, what are we going to do with this thing? Are we going to let it die on the vine? Are we actually going to incorporate it into our lives because, I don't know, God might have stopped for a second and say, hey, you might want to think about doing this. Divine ideas, divine mind. Meditation and silence. Meditation, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. Meditation allows the silence to arise, resulting in the awareness of divine ideas, as well as thoughts, illumination, guidance, and viewpoints related to them. I always laugh at this and I say the funniest thing that Unity teaches us is basically, shut up. That's what meditation is. Shut up. Why? So you can hear Spirit. So you can hear Spirit, right? The need for the type of daily meditation that allows silence to arise is imperative for involving spiritual awareness. And so that's why often if somebody comes and talks to me, I'm just going to talk to them, hey, how's your meditation practice going? And I get this blank look like, huh? might want to check out meditation. And I get it. Some people are going like, I can't really do it. You can do it. We just got to help you figure out the way that you can do it versus anybody else can do it. Because for some people, it might be going for a walk in nature. For some people, it might be painting. For some people, it might be music. For some people, yes, the traditional sit down, be quiet. That might work. But it just depends on the person, right? Prayer focuses intention and attention on what is desired, results in the realization of divine ideas that are claimed and from which good is manifested. Again, when we get quiet, the divine ideas flow through us. Be insistent in prayer and never allow anything to keep you from having your daily quiet hour, communion with God. I would argue you could do it in 5 minutes if you need to. 1 minute. Sometimes for me it's 5 seconds. It just depends. It just depends. Concentration focuses intention and attention on the idea of thoughts of what is desired, gathering the thought forces used to manifest it. Again, these are just some of the tools. Concentration focuses intention and attention on ideas, thoughts, and feelings about what's desired. Concentration. So even though I do surrender the things that I'm working on, the things that I want to manifest in my life, I don't completely let go, never think about it again. Because as the saying goes, as the unity saying goes, where attention goes, where our attention goes, energy flows. There we go. Right? And that's how you do it. Realization is the inner conviction, knowing that what is desired will be demonstrated despite the outer appearances. So this is one of those things that unity really teaches us. It's like, quit looking at what's going on outside of you. Once you decide to do the inner work and you focus on that, yeah, it's going to take a minute for that to show up. And in the meantime, quit focusing on everything else that's going on. But that's what happens is we get stuck. We start looking at all the waves and everything else like that, and we lose our concentration, we lose our focus, and we forget, oh yeah, but wait a minute, I said this is where I'm going, and what Spirit is telling us, don't worry about all the other stuff that's going on. That's what realization is, right? Whatever we wish to demonstrate, we must first realize it as a divine idea, resulting in thoughts, ideas, feelings that see it accomplished. Focused, concentration, I'm seeing this thing. Substance, we've talked about, is the supply of our divine ideas, and it's important to watch your thoughts so the large supply may come through your mind and into your affairs. We talked about the 12 powers. They're over there, and for those metaphysicians, we actually use those 12 powers to manifest what it is that we want by using the 12 powers. And what I would also say is that in this book, there's also some combinations that are really powerful when you're starting to play with the 12 powers. For example, faith and imagination are one of the most powerful tools, or the 12 powers that you can use. Faith linked with imagination are impetus for moving divine ideas from the unseen to the seen, right? And then love, wisdom, and understanding. That's another combination that can be really powerful. Love must be utilized with understanding and wisdom so the good is for everyone, not just you. How about everyone? Right? Peace, not a bad thing to have in your life. Wanting a little bit of peace and harmony create a receptive condition of the mind that assures demonstration. So in other words, again, it's almost like you're just peaceful. You're calm. You're allowing the stuff to flow through you. You're not getting in the way. And you also aren't getting scattered. Calm. Peaceful. Right? Thoughts and feelings, we talked about this last week. Thoughts and feelings create the mental atmosphere from which a person perceives the world. Yes, the spoken word, from a metaphysician standpoint, the word is extremely powerful. Certain words used persistently mold and transform the conditions in the mind, the body, and the affairs. And we apply the spoken word. And again, I know I'm going through this rather quick, but you can also watch the replay and see some of the stuff. Denials and affirmations are specific ways to use the power of our thoughts and words. We deny giving power to any negative appearance. We affirm the truth or the divine idea that has been realized in consciousness. So in other words, thinking on the old stuff, nope, we're going to move that and replace it with the new. That's what we're doing. Gratitude, praise, and blessing. Be grateful for the oneness that we are in truth. Yes, there's the application. Visualizing and seeing the good. So using imagination and visualization, good things. Really good things. Affirm the presence of good and give thanks in advance for its revelation. This is Unity 101. Give thanks for it in advance, right? Patience, yes. Why is it important to be patient? Well, I'll tell you why. Because unfortunately, we live in a third dimensional reality, and when all of a sudden we decide to change that reality, there is a time delay. Thank God. Now, I get it. Sometimes that time delay feels like a little bit too long, but just understand it's coming. You just got to be patient and understand it's coming and not get caught up in when is it going to be here? How long is it going to take? What am I doing wrong? How come I can't get this thing to happen? Da, 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 da. Breathe. Use the spiritual principles. Use these ideas, and they will show up. But we're in this third dimensional reality, and it's going to take a little bit of time. Be okay with that. And in the meantime, stay focused, right? So, that was a lot. You guys still okay? Still okay? Thank you for bearing with all of that. I just want you to know, in wrapping things up, just how powerful you are, how amazing you are, how fun it is to do this stuff consciously. Like, you really can use these tools to create your own reality. You really, really can. And as somebody who has stumbled and had a lot of roadblocks in his life, but who seemingly is starting to have things show up, I'm looking back and saying, well, where were the mistakes made? What did I do? What was good? Because I didn't screw it all up, but I did make mistakes. And I think the more that you play this game, and that's what I want to do, is to encourage you, for everybody, even if you've tried it before and you weren't successful at it, I'm going to invite you back into the game. Come join us. We can do this together. And we can build whatever it is we want to build here. And come together and do it. And practice. And do it right and get more powerful. And guess what? At times we're going to screw it up. This is part of the process. It's all good. It's all what we signed up for. So just know that. Yeah. So, having said all of that, I'm really, really grateful, as always, for your presence here. You are an incredible blessing to each and every one of us. And we are so grateful that you're here to play this game called life, to play this game called being the divine incarnate. It can be a really fun game. And my hope and prayer for you is that you start to understand that. Because we were meant to come down here and have a good time. And for myself, I can look back at my past and see where I got off track with that a little bit. So I used to think it had to be all painful. It always had to be a struggle. Always had to be really hard. It wasn't going to be easy. Of course not. Why would it? Well, probably because of all the examples I saw around me of people struggling, having a hard time, seeing it being tough, yada, 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 yada. And I think the difference is, as I grow and understand more, it's actually becoming easier. It's actually happening easier. And people are showing up, like you. And together, we get to create this reality that we want, whether it's in your individual life or we're doing it collectively. Yes, we are doing it collectively. And that's a whole nother conversation. Anyways, I'm grateful for you. Thank you. God bless. Namaste and Namaway. Thank you.